Obviously, just last night, we received about 95,000 photographs from the Epstein estate. I want to be clear. Our committee, Oversight Democrats, have gone through maybe about 25,000 of them so far. So there's an enormous amount of photos that we have not gone through. It will take days and weeks to ensure that we go through those photos and that a redaction is done in the appropriate way. Let me just also say that clearly, we have put out, I think, maybe 15 to 20 of those photos this morning. Democrats have. We will continue to put out more photos in the days and weeks ahead. But I just caution folks that the redaction process and ensuring that we are protecting the survivors and the women who were abused by Epstein are protected.
Do you have pictures of people engaged in sexual acts as part of this?
As part of this release, yes, there are pictures of people engaged in sexual acts.
Obviously, just last night, we received about 95,000 photographs from the Epstein estate. I want to be clear, our committee, Oversight Democrats, have gone through maybe about 25,000 of them so far. So there's an enormous amount of photos we have not gone through. It will take days and weeks to ensure that we got those photos and that redaction is done in the appropriate way. Let me just also say that clearly we have put out, I think, maybe 15 to 20 of those photos this morning. Democrats will continue to put out more photos in the days and weeks ahead. But I just caution folks that the redaction process and ensuring that we are protecting the survivors and the women who were abused by Epstein are protected. Do you have pictures of people engaged in sexual acts as part of this? As part of this release, yes, there are pictures of people engaged in sexual acts. Are there pictures of men, not Jeffrey Epstein, engaged in such acts? We're going through that. Again, the last time there was a big production, what we tried to do was release all the files eventually. We're trying to be selective about what we release now. In this case, we're not really quite sure yet who is who. Certainly, there's a lot of people involved in some of these acts. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. Look, I need to talk to you about what's happening right now because the floodgates have finally opened on the Epstein files, and what's being revealed is absolutely devastating. The House Oversight Committee has received 95,000 new photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, and they're calling these images disturbing with good reason. These photos offer insight into Epstein and his relationships with some of the most powerful men in the world. And as we're going through them, the scale of what we're dealing with is becoming horrifyingly clear. We're also learning that Donald Trump's own attorney has now resigned, and I'll get to why that matters. But first, let me walk you through what's been released so far, because people need to understand the magnitude of what we're seeing. Robert Garcia from the House Oversight Committee explained the scope of what they're dealing with. They received about 95,000 photographs from the Epstein estate just last night. The Oversight Democrats have gone through maybe 25,000 of them so far, which means there's an enormous amount of photos they haven't even reviewed yet. It's going to take days and weeks to ensure proper redaction is done to protect the survivors and the women who were abused by Epstein. They've put out maybe 15 to 20 of those photos this morning, and they'll continue releasing more in the days and weeks ahead. But they're being careful about the process to make sure victims are protected. So we're talking about less than 1% of the total photo collection being public so far. And already what we're seeing is damning enough to rock the foundation of American politics. Let me show you some of what's been released. There are photos of Jeffrey Epstein with Woody Allen. There are multiple photos of Donald Trump at Epstein's properties. And some of these show Trump with what appear to be young women or girls who could potentially be survivors of Epstein's crimes, though their faces have been redacted to protect their identities. We have photos of Jeffrey Epstein with Steve Bannon. And I want to talk about one of these Bannon photos in particular because what you can see in the background is deeply disturbing. There's something on Epstein's desk in this photo. They've blacked out someone's face, but the image appears to show a woman passed out on either a sofa or a bed. Or I saw this and was immediately creeped out because the implication of why Epstein would have that photo displayed on his desk What that represents about his activities and his victims is horrifying to even contemplate. Steve Bannon was there meeting with Jeffrey Epstein with that image visible in the background. There are also photos showing Trump-branded condoms in Epstein's collection. Condoms that say, "I'm huge," with Trump's branding on them. If Donald Trump wasn't good friends with Jeffrey Epstein, if they didn't have the kind of relationship where Trump's personal branding ended up in Epstein's possession, these items wouldn't exist. But they do exist, and they're part of Epstein's documented collection. There are more photos tying Trump to Epstein that just came out, including a pumpkin that says, "Trumpkin, make Halloween great again." More photos of Jeffrey Epstein in various settings, and additional images of Steve Bannon with massage therapy equipment that we know Epstein used in his abuse of victims. Sarah Longwell pointed out something that should make everyone stop and think. Every now and then I remember that 80% of evangelical Christians voted for Trump. And it's just really something when you consider what's being revealed about his connections to Epstein. There are massive amounts of photos showing Trump with Epstein, Trump with women on Epstein's plane. Just an overwhelming documentation of their relationship that completely contradicts Trump's claims that he barely knew the man. And I want to be clear about something because this is where we're different from Republicans. If anyone who's a Democrat did something wrong, they should 100% suffer the consequences. So yes, there are photos of Bill Clinton in this collection too. I'm not sure what the context of all of them is, but he's in there. If Clinton was involved in anything illegal or immoral related to Epstein, he should face consequences just like anyone else. That's how justice is supposed to work. We don't protect our own side when they do wrong. We demand accountability regardless of party affiliation. There are also photos of Steve Bannon with Epstein showing they were apparently very close, closer than I think most people realized. There's Woody Allen with Jeffrey Epstein in multiple photos. There's Bill Gates with Epstein. We're seeing the full scope of Epstein's network of powerful connections documented in photographic form, and it's staggering. But here's what's really chilling. When asked if there are pictures of people engaged in sexual acts as part of this release, Congressman Moskowitz confirmed, yes, there are pictures of people engaged in sexual acts. When asked specifically if there are pictures of men other than Jeffrey Epstein engaged in such acts, he said they're going through that right now, trying to be selective about what they release while protecting victims, and they're not really sure yet who is who in all the images. But there are certainly a lot of people involved in some of these acts. Think about what he's saying there. Yes, there are other people engaged in sexual acts, either on footage or in photos. He can't say definitively who yet because they're still identifying people, but the only reason it would really matter is if it's Epstein himself or a very famous, powerful person. We have to assume that if we're looking at all these photos showing Bill Gates, Woody Allen, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, all these powerful men photographed at Epstein's properties with their clothes on in social settings, there are probably some of them doing sex acts on video or in photos that haven't been released yet. It could very well include the current president of the United States. We just don't know right now because they're still going through the material. But the implication is absolutely there, and it's terrifying. Someone wrote in response to these Epstein victim photos, "And now you know why he spent the last week trying to start a war with Venezuela." That's exactly right. These distractions, these military threats, the constant chaos and drama, it's all designed to keep people from focusing on what's actually being revealed about Trump's connections to a convicted sex trafficker and the activities that took place at Epstein's properties. We're going to follow this story closely as more comes out, and I'll bring you information that seems relevant as additional material is released. But understand that we're less than 1% into this photo dump. There are tens of thousands more images still being reviewed. And if what we've seen so far is this damaging, what's coming in the weeks ahead could be absolutely explosive. Now let me talk about the other major development today, because it connects to all of this in important ways. Delaware U.S. Attorney Julian Murray, who President Trump appointed just back in July, has resigned. The state's top prosecutor abruptly stepped down on Friday amid the Trump administration's push to install loyalists as prosecutors across the country. Murray, who's a former chair of the Delaware Republican Party, made the announcement in a post saying, "I cannot in good conscience allow my office to become a political football." In her statement, she cited a recent ruling where the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit disqualified Trump's pick for U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, Alina Habba, who then resigned on Monday. Trump has been railing against a Senate tradition known as the blue slip, which allows senators to veto U.S. attorney and judicial nominees for their states. Murray said, "I naively believed that I would be judged on my performance, not my politics. Unfortunately, that was not the case." This is such a big deal because we have people who are willing to stand up and say what's happening here is not right. And this isn't some Democratic partisan making this stand. This is the former chair of the Delaware Republican Party. This is a Republican through and through who's saying the politicization of the Justice Department has gone too far, that she can't in good conscience participate in turning federal prosecution into a political weapon. Between this resignation and the fact that Indiana just voted against changing their congressional maps despite Donald Trump begging them to, I think it shows that Donald Trump's power over the Republican Party is waning. Stuff like the Epstein photos coming out is just another indication that Republicans are getting sick of this. They understand that Trump is not going to be in power forever, and they're starting to ask themselves a crucial question. Do you want to be for this stuff, or do you want to be against it? The smart ones are deciding that it's time to start standing up to him, and his power is decreasing. Thank God for that. Thank God that at least some people are finding the courage to say no, to draw lines, to refuse to participate in the corruption and politicization of institutions that are supposed to serve justice rather than partisan interests. The timing of Murray's resignation in connection with the Epstein photo release isn't coincidental. We're seeing a convergence of scandals and revelations that are making it increasingly difficult for even Republicans to continue defending Trump or participating in his corrupt schemes. When you've got photos documenting your relationship with a notorious sex trafficker, when items bearing your personal branding are found in that trafficker's collection of abuse paraphernalia, when there are potentially photos or videos showing unidentified powerful men engaged in sex acts that are still being reviewed and identified, that creates an environment where even your nominal allies start reconsidering their loyalty. Nobody wants to go down with a sinking ship, and Trump's ship is taking on water from multiple directions right now. The Epstein photos are particularly damaging because they're visual evidence that can't be spun away or explained with verbal deflections. You can claim you barely knew someone, but when there are dozens of photos of you at their properties, on their planes, at their parties, with items bearing your name in their personal collections, those claims fall apart immediately. Trump has spent months trying to suppress these files, calling them boring and unimportant, attacking anyone who demanded their release. Now we see why. This is what he was trying to keep hidden, and the fact that we've only seen a tiny fraction of the total collection means the worst may still be coming. Every day that passes, more photos get reviewed and identified. Every week that goes by, more material gets released to the public. Trump can't stop this process anymore, and the accumulating evidence is devastating to his claims of innocence or distance from Epstein. And here's the thing about having 95,000 photos still mostly unreviewed. That creates ongoing suspense and dread for anyone who might be implicated. If you're a powerful person who spent time at Epstein's properties or participated in his activities, you're now wondering which photos might surface next, which moments from your past might be documented in that collection, which victims might be able to identify you in images that are about to become public. That's the kind of pressure that makes people start cooperating with investigators, that makes them reconsider their loyalties, that makes them decide maybe it's time to get on the right side of history before it's too late. Murray's resignation might be the first domino falling, but it's unlikely to be the last as more material comes out and the full scope of Epstein's network becomes undeniable. The evangelical Christian support for Trump that Sarah Longwell mentioned really is remarkable when you think about it in context with these revelations. 80% of evangelical Christians voting for someone whose personal branding appears in a sex trafficker's condom collection, who's photographed repeatedly at properties where horrific abuse took place, who's connected to a network of powerful men exploiting vulnerable women and girls. How do you reconcile those values, that claimed commitment to morality and family values, with supporting someone so deeply connected to Jeffrey Epstein? The cognitive dissonance required is staggering. The fact that there are photos and potentially videos of sexual acts involving unidentified men raises questions that should terrify everyone in Trump's orbit. Congressional investigators are being careful to protect victims while identifying perpetrators, but that identification process is ongoing. Every powerful man who visited Epstein's properties, who appears in photos from the estate, has to be wondering right now if they're about to be identified in more compromising material. That uncertainty, that fear of what might surface next, that's leverage. That's the kind of pressure that makes people reassess their positions, reconsider their loyalties, and potentially start cooperating with investigators rather than continuing to cover for each other. We might be at the beginning of a domino effect where the accumulating evidence breaks the conspiracy of silence that's protected these men for so long. The Epstein photos are just beginning to come out, but they're already reshaping the political landscape in ways Trump can't control. His attempts to suppress these files failed. His claims of barely knowing Epstein are being exposed as lies by photographic evidence. His efforts to distract with military threats and chaos aren't working to change the subject. The evidence is accumulating. Investigators are going through tens of thousands more photos. Victims are being protected while perpetrators are being identified. And the full scope of Trump's involvement with Epstein's operation is gradually coming into focus. We're going to keep watching this closely, following every development, because this is one of the most important stories in American politics right now. The more that comes out, the harder it becomes to deny the truth about who Trump really is and what he was involved in through his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Thank God people are finally seeing the evidence. And thank God some Republicans are finally finding the courage to stand up and say this isn't right. That's the only way we start holding powerful people accountable for their crimes.